At my fake baby shower, my mother-in-law slid me a dog bowl saying, "Since you can't give us a baby, this suits you better." I smiled and pulled out my folder. The room went completely silent. 23 people sat frozen around Linda's dining room table, their champagne glasses halfway to their lips, watching this moment unfold. I could feel the heat of their stares, the collective intake of breath, the way conversations died mid-sentence. My hands remained perfectly steady as I opened the manila folder I'd carried in like a gift. Inside were documents that would change everything. But let me explain how I got to this moment, because Linda's cruelty wasn't random. It was calculated, strategic, and she'd been building to this humiliation for 3 years. She knew exactly what she was doing when she invited everyone to this baby shower for a woman who couldn't have children. She knew the pain it would cause. She just didn't know that I'd been preparing for this exact scenario for 8 months. My name is Claire, and I'm not the helpless victim Linda thought she was destroying. I'm a corporate litigation specialist with 12 years of experience dismantling companies that think they're untouchable. My specialty is forensic accounting and asset recovery. I've personally recovered over $47 million in embezzled funds across 15 major cases. I know how to follow paper trails, how to uncover hidden assets, and most importantly, how to build airtight legal cases that destroy people's lives completely and legally. What Linda didn't know was that her precious son, Michael, had been stealing from me for 2 years. She didn't know about the separate bank account I'd opened after discovering his first affair. She definitely didn't know that I'd been documenting every single transaction, every lie, every cruel comment she'd made about my infertility. And she had no idea that I'd spent the last 8 months building the most comprehensive case of financial abuse and fraud that my law firm had ever seen. My current salary is $340,000 annually, plus bonuses that typically bring my total compensation to around $480,000. I have $1 to million in investments that Michael never knew about, including a trust fund from my grandmother that matured when I turned 30. My professional network includes 3 federal judges, 12 corporate attorneys, and 2 FBI agents who specialize in white-collar crime. When I decide to destroy someone, I don't just win. I obliterate them so completely that they never recover. Michael thought he was married to a quiet, desperate woman who would tolerate anything to avoid being alone. He was wrong. Linda thought she was dealing with a weak daughter-in-law who could be bullied into submission. She was also wrong. They both forgot that I've spent my entire career studying how people hide their crimes, and I'm exceptionally good at exposing them. The evidence in this folder represented 8 months of methodical investigation. I'd hired 2 private investigators, a forensic accountant, and a digital recovery specialist. We'd uncovered Michael's affair with his secretary, Jennifer, documented his embezzlement of $127,000 from my inheritance money, and traced his gambling addiction that had resulted in $89,000 in hidden debt. But the real prize was discovering that Michael had been claiming me as a business partner on loan applications while forging my signature on documents that made me liable for his failures. That's federal fraud, and it's punishable by up to 20 years in prison. But I wasn't done yet. During my investigation, I'd also discovered that Linda had been receiving $200 monthly from Michael for the past 18 months, money he'd been stealing from our joint accounts. She knew it was stolen because she'd specifically asked him not to tell me about their arrangement. I had recordings of those conversations, thanks to Michael's habit of putting family calls on speaker while I was supposedly in another room. Linda thought she was humiliating me with this dog bowl stunt. Instead, she'd just given me the perfect public venue to destroy both of them in front of everyone who mattered to their social circle. I stood up slowly, letting my chair scrape against the hardwood floor. The sound echoed in the silent room. "Linda, I need to thank you for this gift and for this gathering. Because there's something everyone here needs to know about your son and the family you're so proud of." Michael's face had gone completely white. He knew something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what. Jennifer wasn't here, of course. She was probably at home, 6 months pregnant with Michael's child, waiting for him to leave his barren wife and marry her. She had no idea that Michael was about to lose everything. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. This is a forensic accounting report showing that Michael has stolen $127,000 from my inheritance over the past 2 years. He's used this money to finance his affair with his secretary, fund his gambling addiction, and pay his mother $3,200 monthly to help her mortgage payments. The gasps around the table were audible. Linda's sister Margaret dropped her champagne glass, and it shattered on the floor. Michael tried to stand up, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. This document shows that Michael has forged my signature on 12 separate loan applications, making me legally responsible for $89,000 in debt that I never knew existed. That's federal fraud. The FBI takes signature forgery very seriously, especially when it involves stolen inheritance money." Michael finally found his voice. "Claire, you don't understand. I can explain everything. The business was struggling and I just needed—" "What you needed was to not commit felony fraud against your wife," I interrupted. "But let's talk about what you really needed that money for. Jennifer Blake is 6 months pregnant, isn't she, Michael? Your secretary. Your pregnant secretary who's been waiting for you to leave your barren wife and start a real family with her." The room erupted. Linda's friends started whispering frantically. Michael's college buddy Derek, who'd been best man at our wedding, stared at Michael in shock. Linda herself looked like she'd been slapped. But I wasn't done. I pulled out a second set of documents. "Linda, since you're so concerned about family legacies, let me share something interesting about your financial situation. You've been receiving stolen money from your son for 18 months. Money that came directly from my inheritance. That makes you an accessory to fraud and theft. My legal team has recommended federal charges." Linda tried to speak, but no words came out. She'd gone from smug and cruel to terrified in less than 5 minutes. I continued. "But here's what's really interesting. Michael has been telling Jennifer that he's wealthy. He's promised to buy her a house, pay for private schools for their child, and set up a trust fund for their baby. Jennifer has no idea that Michael is actually $89,000 in debt and about to lose his job for embezzling from his own business accounts." That part was true too. My investigation had revealed that Michael had been stealing from his company's petty cash and expense accounts to fund his lifestyle. His boss, David Richardson, was here at this party, and his expression suggested he was putting pieces together that he didn't like. I pulled out another document. "David, you might want to look at this analysis of Michael's expense reports over the past 18 months. The pattern of fraudulent submissions is quite clear. My team found $23,000 in false claims, including hotels that don't exist and conferences that were never held." David Richardson stood up immediately. "Michael, we need to talk. Now." But Michael couldn't leave, because I'd already sent copies of all evidence to the FBI, the IRS, his employer, and his professional licensing board. I'd also sent a complete package to Jennifer Blake, including photos of Michael at our anniversary dinner last month, where he'd told me he loved me and wanted to work on our marriage while secretly planning to leave me for her. The consequences had started before the party even began. "So, Linda," I said, turning back to my mother-in-law, "you wanted to humiliate me because I can't give you grandchildren, but your son is about to give you something better. He's about to give you a federal criminal investigation, bankruptcy proceedings, and a new understanding of what public humiliation actually feels like." I closed the folder and picked up my purse. "I filed for divorce, obviously. I've also filed restraining orders against both of you, and I've frozen all joint assets pending the fraud investigation. Michael, you'll be hearing from the FBI within 48 hours. Linda, Your lawyer should contact my lawyer about your liability in the inheritance theft." The room was completely silent except for the sound of Linda crying. Michael sat slumped in his chair, finally understanding that his life as he knew it was over. David Richardson was already on his phone, presumably calling company security. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Linda? That dog bowl was actually perfect, because after the criminal charges are filed and the asset seizure is complete, you might need it more than I do. 3 weeks later, Michael was arrested at his office on federal fraud charges. The FBI had expanded their investigation after discovering additional irregularities in his company's accounts. He was facing up to 25 years in federal prison and complete financial ruin. His employer had fired him immediately and filed their own criminal charges for embezzlement. Jennifer Blake had broken up with him the day after receiving my evidence package. She'd realized that not only was Michael a liar and a thief, but he was also broke and facing decades in prison. She'd moved back to her parents' house and filed for child support, not realizing that you can't get child support from someone who has no assets and no income. Linda had been forced to sell her house to pay for legal fees. The mortgage payments Michael had been covering were now her responsibility, and without his stolen money, she couldn't afford them. She'd moved into a one-bedroom apartment across town and taken a job at a grocery store to survive. At 64 years old, she was working retail for the first time in her life, and her social circle had completely abandoned her. The investigation had also revealed that Linda knew about Michael's affairs. She'd encouraged them, hoping he would leave me for someone who could give her grandchildren. She'd actively participated in the emotional abuse by making cruel comments about my infertility and undermining our marriage at every opportunity. The recordings I'd made proved her intent to cause psychological harm, and my lawyer had used them to secure additional compensation in our divorce settlement. I received full ownership of our house, both cars, and $127,000 in compensatory damages for the stolen inheritance money. Michael's retirement accounts, his business interests, and his personal assets were all transferred to me as part of the restitution order. I also received permanent alimony of $4,000 monthly, which would be paid by garnishing any future income Michael might earn after his prison sentence. But the real satisfaction came from knowing that their cruelty had backfired so completely. Linda had thrown this party to humiliate me for being childless. Instead, she'd given me the perfect opportunity to expose their crimes in front of everyone who mattered to them. Her church friends, her book club members, Michael's professional colleagues, and their entire social network had witnessed their complete destruction. Michael was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. He would be eligible for parole in 12 years, at which point he would be 51 years old with no assets, no career, and no prospects. Jennifer had moved to another state and refused to let him have any contact with their child. His reputation in our community was permanently destroyed. Linda never spoke to me again, but I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd aged dramatically over the past year. The stress of bankruptcy, social isolation, and watching her son's life collapse had taken a severe toll. She'd developed health problems and could barely afford her medications on her grocery store salary. Margaret, Linda's sister, who had witnessed the entire confrontation, cut off all contact with Linda after learning about her role in the fraud. She told their mutual friends that she was ashamed to be related to someone who would steal from family and encourage adultery. Margaret became one of my character witnesses during the divorce proceedings. Derek, Michael's former best friend, testified against him during the criminal trial. He provided evidence of Michael's gambling addiction and confirmed that Michael had bragged about manipulating me financially. Derek's testimony helped secure the maximum sentence. David Richardson, Michael's former boss, implemented new financial oversight procedures at their company after the scandal. He also provided a reference letter for me when I applied for my promotion, praising my thoroughness and integrity in exposing the fraud. Today, I'm sitting in my beautifully redecorated home office, reviewing a new case that will earn me a bonus of approximately $180,000. My total compensation this year will exceed $520,000, and my investment portfolio has grown to $1 million. I've been promoted to senior partner at my firm, partly because of the publicity from handling my own case so effectively. The dog bowl sits on my bookshelf now, polished and gleaming, not as a reminder of humiliation, but as a trophy of strategic thinking. It represents the night I turned Linda's cruelty into Michael's federal conviction and their complete social and financial destruction. I learned that revenge isn't about emotion. It's about patience, documentation, and superior resources. When someone tries to humiliate you, the best response isn't anger. It's methodical, legal, and complete annihilation of their ability to hurt anyone else. Linda wanted to give me a dog bowl because I couldn't provide her son with children. Instead, she provided me with the perfect opportunity to provide them both with federal criminal records and permanent financial ruin. I'd call that a fair trade.